I want to welcome everyone to the Community IT Innovators webinar, Nonprofit IT, a Look Ahead. This is always one of our most popular webinars every year, and we have a panel today of our senior staff to talk about cutting edge and future trends in tech and what that means for nonprofits. They're going to talk about some fun stuff like AI, crypto, cybersecurity, supply chain and long-term labor changes, geopolitics as it relates to tech companies and products, and how any of this might impact your nonprofit and the tech that you use and will use 5 and 10 years in the future. So my name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm the Outreach Director for Community IT, and I'll be the moderator today. I'm very happy to hear from our experts. So Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Carolyn, and I'm looking forward to our session today as well. As was mentioned, my name is Matthew Eshelman, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Community IT. I'm happy to have celebrated my 21st year of service with the company. And also, I think I'm coming up on about 10 years in the role of CTO, where I focus primarily on cybersecurity, more sophisticated solutions architecture, and then overseeing the platform that we use to support our nearly 7,000 managed endpoints.
Well, thank you, Matt. My name is Noura Abuki. I'm a senior consultant at Community IT. I've been with Community IT for 13 years, and currently I advise our clients on best practices for managing their technology infrastructure. I also conduct technology assessment, develop IT plans, and build strategic roadmaps for our clients. I'm very grateful to be with you all and excited to talk about the future trends.
Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Spray. Up until the end of 2022, I was the business IT manager and led our team of IT managers focused around the practice around client IT management, IT road mapping, and IT consulting. And then just recently, I was promoted to be the director of information systems and technology. So I'm also looking ahead and looking to plan for Community IT's internal IT for the next few years as well. So, you know, I'm speaking about this, but I'm also learning about this as well.
Thank you, Pat. So before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, a little bit about us. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. So we provide outsourced IT support, and we work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. Our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish their missions through the effective use of technology. We are big fans of well-managed IT and what that can do for your nonprofit. We serve nonprofits across the United States, and we've been doing this for over 20 years. We are technology experts. We are consistently given an MSP 501 recognition for being a top MSP, which is an honor we received again in 2022. All right, so I wanted to talk about our learning objectives for today. Last month, our panel talked about trends in essential IT and basics that, in our observation, all nonprofits should be doing, like supporting remote workers, improving cybersecurity over the long haul, using cloud platforms effectively for collaboration. So if you missed that, you can go back and check out the video for that. But this month, we're going to talk more about forward-looking trends and opportunities that tech-savvy nonprofits might want to pursue. And we're going to talk about the ways we expect nonprofit IT and IT generally to evolve over the next few years. So our learning objectives for today are that we hope at the end of the session, you will understand the 2023 cutting edge and future IT trends for nonprofits, that you will learn how to keep up with tech trends and why it's important for nonprofits to stay current. Even if your nonprofit doesn't, deal with technology per se, technology is so pervasive in the way that we work and how our organizations operate. And then we're going to enjoy, I hope, a wide discussion of nonprofits of the future and how they will work. I want to remind everyone today that for these webinars, Community IT is vendor agnostic. We only make recommendations to our clients, and we only do that based on their specific business needs. All right, so we are going to start off with a poll like we used to do to get to know you a little bit and get you to think about the role of technology at your organization. So I know everyone uses technology at their organization, but we wanted to see a little bit more about how IT works in your nonprofit. So is it something that you use because you have to, or is it something that you it's like in your DNA? You were founded by disruptors and you use IT in innovative ways. So I'm just going to go through these options for you before launching the poll. So option one would be basic office support. So you use IT to send emails, print reports, use business tools online, but you manage mostly everything yourself. So you just need basic office support. Basic office support plus is the second option. You have business critical platforms that IT supports, like a CRM, database, financial tools. You might have more than one office that you're supporting. The option three is that you deliver services using IT in addition to basic office support. So it could be an education setting where you're supporting, devices that the students are using. Could be healthcare situation where the people who work for you or volunteers are using devices that you provide. And then the fourth option is you're founded by disruptors, you use IT in innovative ways, and it's just in your DNA. Or of course, the option 5 would be that it doesn't really apply to you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So you should be able to see it. Looks like we have pretty good response. So I'm going to go ahead and share those results. And Matt, would you mind reading the responses?
Sure. So we've got so the majority of the respondents are in that basic office support plus category, followed by folks who are delivering services using IT. And then we kind of bookended by organizations that are using it in an innovative way or a kind of a transformational way, with those organizations that are still functioning at a very basic level. So a little bell curve distribution there, with the majority in those middle categories.
I was just going to say that it looked like a great bell curve. And I want to make sure to say there's no judgment here. So if you are using IT in really basic ways, if you're using IT in really innovative ways, I think the most important thing is to know yourself and know your organization, your organizational culture, because that's going to help you plan for the IT that you need and that you want to implement. So you don't want to take something really cutting edge and try to implement it at an organization that has a much more traditional approach to IT. That would not be successful, but the opposite is true too, right? If you went the other way. So that was really very helpful. Thank you. All right, so our next, we are going to do a second poll, which helps us know more about you, which is where is your organization in terms of your size? So what size is your nonprofit? From 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 100, 101 plus, or it doesn't apply. And of course, your size is only one indicator of kind of your organizational structure. You could be a large organization that still acts like a startup. You could be a small organization that's, growing very quickly. So it's just one aspect, but I think we have pretty good response here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end it. And then how about Pat? Would you mind reading the results?
Sure. So we have 32% of our respondents have 26 to 100 staff. We have 24%. We actually have two groups of 24%. So 11 to 25 staff and more than 100 staff. And then we have 16% have 1 to 10 staff, and then we had 3% that reported that it's not applicable.
All right, another bell curve. So thank you all, that really helps us. Okay, so this next slide, this was something that we talked a lot about a little bit when we're preparing for this. So we agreed that technology and work are always changing, but we are living through a sea change right now, and no one really knows what nonprofit work and technology will be like in the future. So in the big picture, we know that we've lived through a global shock over the past few years with the pandemic. And I hope this is not a spoiler for anyone, but we know that that's not the last global shock that we will experience in our lifetimes, and perhaps not even in the next decade or so. There will be other things that happen that have a global impact, and those global disruptions and events will, of course, impact technology. And we could see that in the way the pandemic interrupted supply chains. We couldn't get the chips, so then there weren't any cars, all of those types of issues. And it also, of course, changed the way that we work. And a lot of organizations went to working remotely and are still either working remotely or hybrid or coming back into the offices now. So if we think about, 10 years in the future, it doesn't seem that far away. 10 years ago, doesn't seem like it was that long ago. But if you think about it, 10 years ago, Obama had just been reelected. And I think, no matter what your politics are, that feels like a different era to me. And if you think about the United States elections in terms of the next 10 years, there will have been 3 more elections from between now and 2033. So the pandemic, the next global illness, wars that we're living through right now that are very disruptive, climate crisis, water shortages, all of these are going to have an impact on the way we live and work. And of course, IT is intertwined into the ways that we live and work. And one of the things that's interesting about thinking of the future like this and how IT impacts us all personally and how we work and where we work is that the nonprofit sector, of course, is also right in the middle of those changes. So our organizations, of course, are deeply involved in serving and in advocating in those sectors, such as environment, health, global advocacy, local advocacy, labor, justice, education, all of these different aspects that are touched by a global, shock to the system. So before we start thinking and talking about IT in this webinar, I want you all to kind of close your eyes and think about what you think is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I would love it if you would chat in your responses to the questions I'm going to ask, and I'm also going to ask our panelists to weigh in a little bit. So we're going to talk about IT specifics in a few minutes, but for now we wanted to just kind of get our juices flowing and think about the big picture. So one question that comes up a lot in science fiction, of course, is will corporations or countries hold power in the future? So what do you think, corporations or countries? You can use the Q&A to put in your responses. So corporations or countries, and I'm going to ask the panel as well to weigh on this. Do you think, like in Star Wars or Star Trek, there will be governments of the future that will have a Senate or that sort of thing? Or do you think that it will be like more like Aliens, where like the corporation is in charge and doing all of their things? So do you have opinions?
I don't know. I'm looking through the questions here, and it seems like maybe our audience is evenly divided between the two. And I think it is really, maybe hard to pick one. I think it is clear that corporations themselves have been exerting kind of much more power than maybe they traditionally have. But I think at the end of the day, they're still kind of in general like beholden to government regulations and restrictions to kind of take over things. I think, we see that particularly as it relates to China in terms of what technology is available there and kind of how corporations have really had to, change their operating model to fit within, that operating structure, right? If you're a Office 365 customer, there's like a whole separate Chinese tenant. If you have a Meraki firewall, like there's a whole Meraki entity for those for those organizations. So
I think that here in the U.S., corporations have certainly invested a lot more money in politics in an attempt to control or to manage the impact of regulations and taxes and that kind of thing. But I do think that whenever Congress gets their dander up about technology and big corporations, like those same companies, they kind of scramble to respond as well. So I think there's still going to be a very strong influence that corporations will have in government, especially since they have a lot of money. But I do still think that government is still gonna hold the reins ultimately. And who knows, like what the political winds will, which way they'll blow 10 years from now when it comes to corporations.
I'll add that government have come to realize that corporations actually are required these days to advance in technology. Investments in government-only run researches have not yielded results as fast enough. So they are not falling behind. Governments are collaborating with private corporations to ensure that they still have a foothold and can guide where that technology is going. Especially when we live in a world where there's so much competition out there. So in the United States, I'm seeing a lot more investment in Silicon Valley collaboration with government.
All great answers. So my next question is, and this came up as well, I think, Nura, you had remarked that there were some nonprofits that are concerned about not just like the special metals in laptops, but the plastics as well. And so when you're replacing your laptops every 3 to 4 years, environmentally, what is that doing? And then there's a bunch of other environmental questions. So this is another big question, big picture question. Will technology accelerate climate crisis or be able to help slow it? So audience as well, you can put in the Q&A your response. What do you think? I'm sorry for asking binary questions, but what do you think about technology and environmental crisis?
I know one thing we talked about was the whole Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency mining, and how that was really contributing to a lot of ecological damage, and that some currencies had actually shifted their model so that they would be less ecologically damaging, and just require less resources and computing power.
Anyone else on the panel want to weigh in? I'm seeing in the chat the Q&A in accelerate, I think optimistically people are saying, I hope it slows.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have no choice but to be optimistic that technology is going to solve some of the problems that previous technology has created. I mean, I think, we could also all choose to, separate ourselves from society and, get a horse and buggy and kind of go back to the farm. But I think, that's not a realistic, option for many, many folks. And I do think that, macro trends related to energy efficiency are really positive. I mean, I was just saying that, solar is now, overtaking, maybe coal or natural gas in terms of the lower cost to produce in terms of cost per kilowatt hour. And so I think that those shifts towards renewable sources of energy are going to be, I think, dramatic. However, we still have the vast majority of the world hasn't kind of gone through the same, carbon use cycle that the United States has. And so there's a lot of people that, are going to need to, have that increase in, earning potential that energy consumption drives. And so I'm optimistic, and I think but it's going to take a while to get there.
I think one of the challenges, sorry, go ahead, Nora.
I agree with Matt. It's going to take a while to get there, particularly given the awareness. It's just coming to light that a lot of nonprofit organizations, some of them just have to use technology to actually achieve their mission. And for that primary reason, may not be necessarily focused on the environment. But thankfully, there are advocates for the environment. And globally, we are seeing countries signing agreements to save the earth. So for that reason, I think this climate change awareness, it's gonna keep going across the globe, and we are likely going to see a positive outcome out of it.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of predicting the future is that is that, we're predicting it based on the present. And so we, to some degree, we expect trends that we see today to continue and improve. But what often happens in the future is that there's some innovation or some just complete paradigm shift that completely changes the way we live or the way that we communicate with each other. Or, we may see this kind of change hopefully in energy production, and maybe, fusion technology will suddenly become a thing, and we'll completely stop using non-renewable sources of energy. It's not something that can really be predicted, but I'm hopeful that kind of thing will happen someday. I mean, it's like 60 years ago, people predicted the future as being like flying cars and their food being delivered in pill form, and nobody really predicted that there'd be the internet or how the internet would be used and how we would all interconnect and communicate together on the internet. So it's just hard to predict the future, what the future looks like. But yeah, I'm certainly hopeful that we will overcome, in the long term, we will overcome the climate crisis.
All right, so cautiously hopeful. So I have another question that's another kind of unpredictable one, but the continued impact on work. So we have robots, we have AI. Are robots and AI going to be performing more jobs of the future? And it seems like one of the things I feel like the pandemic kind of brought home was that there are some jobs that can be done remotely, and there are many jobs that have to be done in person. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts on work of the future. I can jump in for a quick second. I was at a presentation last week about farms of the future, and a lot of innovative stuff that Microsoft is doing with farming, including like drones and GPS powered tractors that can drive around the field by themselves and know exactly where they are, and AI to know when to fertilize, when to harvest, all of those pieces, which I just found fascinating in terms of course, then they were talking about how you get broadband to all of the places where people are growing the food that we need to eat. So if anyone wants to weigh in on work of the future, what do you think?
It's been really interesting to to read the news and kind of watch the news coming in all about this, the Chat GPT and OpenAI stuff. Traditionally, robots and computers have been very, have been used to replace people for the repetitive, monotonous work. And so it'll be interesting to see, as like AI takes on something of a creative role, where computers end up being used, not necessarily to replace people, but to supplement what people are doing now instead.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, kind of add in, I think, there's certainly no question that these technology tools are going to be used to increase, overall efficiency. I mean, even look at, community IT in our small way, right? I mean, we have a team of, effectively 3 techs that manage 7,000 endpoints. And to think of like the work that they do and how much efficiency that represents from, using our tools to install patches and do reporting and, do all of this stuff, that if you were one person, or if that was divided amongst, a much smaller set that didn't have the tools in place, like how much time that would take. So I think, the augmentation of that staffing with whatever robots and automation is, I think is certainly going to continue. But yes, I have to wonder. I mean, I think there are, I think the ethics and, we can certainly do a lot. I think, the question of should we or how should we do that, I think is certainly trailing, the technical capability of what, certainly is possible. But I think the ethics and really, having some discussions around what does this mean? What does this look like? How is this impacting us as a society, as a culture, as a community? We're way behind that conversation.
I think that this is where nonprofit leaders have to think about the risks and advantages of the technologies to come. they're going to be advanced, they will be effective, but there could be ethical issues, there could be privacy issues there. So, but having it in mind, knowing exactly what will work for you and understanding the risks will be very important.
That's a perfect segue to my last question, which was about surveillance. So we just were all fascinated by the balloon. And I think that, you know, many people have pointed out, like, compared to like one balloon, you know, the number of our devices that are keeping an eye on us. And I know I don't know how much in the nonprofit sector, but definitely there were a lot of stories about when remote work started, you know, different apps that you could put on your employees' computers so you could see if their eyes were looking at the screen while they were supposed to be working. And I know in education, they have the cheating, you know, remote school cheating. Again, the same thing, like how much time are you looking at? Where are you looking? You can't look down. It'll flag it if you're trying to, you know, cheat on your test or what have you. So where's the surveillance state going, and what will be the impact of that type of big picture IT, all of our devices, keeping an eye on all of us all the time on a lot of things that nonprofits work on, like injustice, accountability, secrecy, privacy. What do you think? Matt, you're the cybersecurity guy. You want to talk about?
Well, I don't know. I feel like in this case, I'm so much more of a Luddite because, I mean, my initial reaction when we get this question, I think maybe we even talked about it last time, is like, well, yeah, what are the tools that we can deploy to do this? And I think the answer is that you don't. You know, I think the human touch and the relationships that people have with their managers, like that really should be where the focus is on. You know, kind of optimizing work, and the idea that you're going to somehow, deploy some tool that's going to analyze somebody's keystrokes and figure out if they're being a good employee or not is, you know, takes us down towards a path of a society that I don't want to really, you know, participate in building. And so I do think that it's that ethical framework that we need to have to ensure that the technology tools that we're adopting are in service to that greater end and not, you know, subverting that. So I think, again, I think we see that particularly when it comes to, I think, some of the failings that technology has had in particularly in virtual schooling. I mean, I'm the parent of, you know, 2 elementary school kids, and yeah, I mean, I have a flexible job. I was able to be there and be present, but virtual learning for us and many other people was a real failure because the reliance on the technology, it just wasn't, you know, that wasn't what was needed, I think, for many kids. And the test data is kind of now showing that, you know, we really need to be focused on, you know, building, you know, foundations of relationships and, you know, the tactical skills. And we can always have technology later, you know, so.
Yeah, I think about this in the context of, you know, 10, 20 years ago, you would sign up for a service. You know, you would sign up for a Facebook account, and nobody reads those policies you have to agree to when you sign up. Nobody read the software and user license agreements when you were installing something. But I know more and more, like, I don't want to give out my email address to have to sign into things because, you know, partly because I don't want like the spam marketing materials, but I also don't want my email address to be given out to these data collection agencies that are going to collate all this information about me so people can target market me as well. And I think, you know, people are becoming more aware that that's going on and are more and more trying to avoid it. I think on the other side that there is a tension, you know, from, you know, just forces that want to control us, whether that's government or, you know, corporations that want more information about us so that they can sell more stuff to us.
And this is where the choice comes for the end user, the person that's using that technology. It has been traditional for most developers or software companies to not disclose their privacy information or what they do with our data, but more and more we are requesting for that information and choosing to use vendors that actually protect our privacy. So because of that choice, I think some other companies that don't have that open scenarios, they may be left out, and a lot of companies don't want to be left out, so they may be forced to begin to be transparent about what they do with our information. But only time will tell, and but I think we have the power, and hopefully we will be able to exercise it.
Yeah, one other thing to think about is, speaking as, if you're a nonprofit organization, is you may want to, for example, install some mobile device management policies on your staff's, personal, mobile phone to help secure your data if your staff is using, which they probably are, using their phones to access the company email or files. So you may want the ability to delete that data. And, your staff may say, well, I don't want your policies on my phone. I don't want you controlling or managing, have any access to my phone. And so there is some tension there as well, which I think everybody is still kind of figuring out, and companies are approaching different ways.
That's a great, I had left cybersecurity off because we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but right now I'm going to move to our next poll, which is how cutting edge are you? So I'm going to go ahead and launch this and let people weigh in. For your nonprofit, here are some options. So you could say we accept crypto, and you can choose all of them that apply to you. So we accept crypto donations, for example, option 1. Option 2, we use AI tools and are starting to use them this year as they become more and more, in the news. Option 3, we start using cybersecurity tools as soon as they come on the market. So we're very cybersecurity forward. 4 is we love open source platforms and custom apps. So we're building our own stuff. Option 4, we are on all the social media platforms you've never heard of, but your kids use. So we're very forward in terms of social. Or option 6 is not available, or we are Luddites and we admit it. So I'm firmly in that camp in terms of my own technology, and I'm happy to admit it. So I'm going to give people another moment or two to respond to this. So how cutting edge is, I should say, not just you, but your organization. How cutting edge is your organization? I don't know if that's how cutting edge do you want to be, but how cutting edge are you now? All right, now I'm going to go ahead and share these results. And Nora, would you mind reading the results?
So 50% of our respondents are Luddites. So you're not alone, Carol. And we do have 27% actually use cybersecurity tools, and they start using cybersecurity tools as soon as they are on the market. So they are early adopters. Then followed by 19%, we have 2 in that category. Some use AI tools or are starting to use them this year, and then some use open source platforms and custom apps. Then we move on to 12% that are on social media platforms you never heard of. And then lastly, there's 4% that actually accept crypto donations. So that's quite a revelation.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, everyone. All right, so now we're going to move on and talk a little bit more about some more specifics about IT. And so again, if you have questions, I know a lot of you submitted questions at registration, but feel free to put questions in the Q&A option. We're going to spend about 5 minutes on each of these topics, taking questions and talking about how IT and nonprofits now relate to these different topics. We have about 6 topics and 3 speakers. So I think I'm going to ask Matt if you would like to go first. I promised we would talk about some more cybersecurity issues. So we have 2 topics for you: crypto and blockchain, and cyber.
Great. And I'll try to be concise because I think there's lots of other great stuff here. So, I mean, I do think, cybersecurity continues to challenge organizations, due to the, ongoing rise in cybercrime and then the associated spike in cyber liability insurance. I know we're dealing with that as a company, having our renewal rate triple. Now, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some cyber incidents as part of our incident report that we're currently working on, and that webinar will be in April. But I mean, I think I am able to say that, on the crypto side or the cybersecurity side, we are seeing the impact of tool adoption helping to reduce the overall number of incidents. And so I think that's something clear as we get more clients on more of the advanced, particularly email security tools, that really drops the number of things that are getting reported into us. And again, multi-factor authentication, that adoption has really been impactful in terms of reducing the amount of compromised accounts that we're seeing. However, we are seeing that, overall, wire fraud and kind of financially based crime is up, kind of, at least for our organizations, year over year. So I think, kind of on that cyber crime, cybersecurity side, things, there's many different elements to that discussion. But, kind of the big trends that we see are really cyber liability insurance and kind of the associated cyber crime really driving technology tool adoption as a way to help reduce costs and help protect the organization. And again, the implementation of more tools really is effective in terms of providing protection and reducing risk. I will say, so kind of talking a little bit about like in the blockchain or cryptocurrency world of things, I think the sheen of that as a platform, I think, has really started to wear off, with the implosion of FTX, in general, cryptocurrency prices collapsing. It's clear that it's not a hedge against inflation. And so I think some of this the ideal of cryptocurrency really has worn off. And again, the economic impact or the consumption to generate it, I think, is really people are looking at that with a lot more critical eye. And for most organizations, I think that that we work with that represent kind of the small to mid-sized nonprofit space, the idea that you're going to build something on blockchain is just it's just not the right tool. You need a good database, you need an effective online engagement platform that can do donations, and that is a great solution, right? You're not going to gain anything by building that all on blockchain. I do think that some of the concepts and ideals of this decentralization are really appealing. I think especially as we see trends overall towards people, being in big corporate platforms, right? You're in Google Workspace, you're in Office 365. Like, that's the choice. We don't see organizations in kind of third-party or open source or community developed solutions for email as much, that we're maybe starting to see a little bit more example of that, for organizations that are maybe privacy first to use some of those solutions. But, those effective big platforms have really taken the vast majority of the marketplace, and that's driving a lot of the tech innovation and enabling, I think, tremendous efficiency and capacity, for organizations to just not have to worry about their tech stack and be able to focus on doing their job. So I think those are just a couple of insights that I would share as it relates to kind of the cybersecurity world, and then also, it's this kind of like crypto, ransomware, blockchain. It's all kind of tied in together, and unfortunately, that does seem to be the biggest use case is receiving funds so that you can decrypt your ransomware files. Yeah. So
we have a question that came in on the chat, which was to discuss hardware keys and passwordless login.
Yes, so I think that is a big trend that the big vendors are really pushing in terms of shifting away from passwords. So I think in 2016, Microsoft published an article that said, hey, you don't need to change your password every 90 days, right? But that was in 2016. And here I still see it on cyber liability insurance applications, like, do you change your password every 90 days? And I think, yes, the market and the big vendors are going towards this kind of concept of passwordless login, using physical security keys or using your phone to sign in. And so I think that is a way that you can make good security easy to use. And so you don't have to think of a crazy complex pass. You don't have to change it. Like, you're able to authenticate using tools that you have. And so I certainly am a big fan of that. As a
I think
way
you're going to
just
talk more about those two issues in April when you talk about our incident report.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so that's a welcome trend.
I also wanted to touch on, because I think we had a question, one of the attendees, about password managers. And password managers is a way to like manage passwords in the organization. An alternative and kind of a step up from that is single sign-on, where your staff would log into a service, like Okta is a very popular one, and then by logging in there, they would be authenticated into the different applications. So instead of managing passwords for everywhere somebody has to sign in, they just sign in one place. And SSO is always going to be more secure because it's built to be secure. It's a single place to like monitor and manage the user's identities. Password managers can be a kind of a stopgap and a way to organize and to some degree share passwords more securely, but you still have all those different passwords and all those, each of those is a vulnerability as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great observation. I want to make sure that we get to some of the other topics as well. If you have more questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A option. If we don't get to all of the questions, we will include them in the transcript. So, feel free to get your questions in. I wanted to turn a little bit to this central heart of creating community. We talked a little bit earlier about corporations and how you can be on, you can just be a Microsoft Office, but then, what if they discontinue a platform that you've been using or that your nonprofit is using to communicate with your volunteers or however it's working, and how that can impact the nonprofit sector. So I think, Noura, you had some thoughts on creating community and kind of the role of technology in that.
Yes, thank you, Carolyn. Certainly creating communities over the years, a lot of nonprofit organizations have leveraged on the big tech company solutions that are available to them. For instance, Amazon had a Smile donation program that a lot of nonprofit took advantage of, but then all of a sudden it disappeared. So you can equally talk about some of the services that Google actually offers on its platform that it unceremoniously just shuts down. The more you invest in building a community through some of these platforms, there is a potential that some platforms may actually go away. Changes that came into Twitter, you may have built workflows, processes, and outreach programs through Twitter, but Twitter, with the change of leadership, has brought in new approaches and ways to do things. So that might have impacted your nonprofit organization. So it begs the question, does a nonprofit then actually invest in building its own custom tool that allows it to build communities, or should let's say communities actually look for tools that actually are reliable, that are sustainable over the long term? So these are some of the tough questions that we are seeing. I would even mention TikTok. TikTok is one popular tool and platform that is available, and some nonprofit actually are using it. Maybe several of them are using it. It's just the trendiest platform of that time, gives you perhaps the most outreach to your potential donors or your potential customers. So it's quite interesting how nonprofit take advantage of the big corporations solutions for building communities, but there's that concern that it may not be sustainable over time, and nonprofits need to be forward thinking about what is the next tool that may be available, that is sustainable, that they could take full advantage of.
Thank you so much, Nora. I feel like this is a good segue into something that Pat wanted to talk about, which is the kind of tension between corporate tools and building your own tools. So like you were saying, like, does your community find the tool that fits how your community works, or do you adapt to the tool that you have? So Pat, did you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think, a couple decades ago, if you wanted a solution, if you wanted like a CRM, it was kind of a toss up between hiring a developer or trying to find an off the shelf solution, customize it. And then these off the shelf solutions, these kind of corporate solutions just became, specialized, like, so different industries, would have different CRMs, and then they also just became better and better and more customizable, and you could kind of integrate them with other solutions. And then, especially with just everybody kind of spreading out, with COVID, it's just become very easy within the past few years to kind of build out your own solutions. Our recommendation has for a long time been, to get a standard solution. These typically have like kind of the best practices built in. They tend to be, industry standard. But now you have nonprofits where you'll have like a team of people who are kind of siloed, doing their own thing and trying to get their work done. And so they reach out and do their own research and find kind of their own solution, or kind of cobble something together using maybe some of these, like these no code or these low code solutions and APIs to integrate things. Power Automate is a great example of something where you can kind of create these custom workflows to help you do your work. But then you're kind of left with this kind of cobbled together solution that you've got maybe one person who's set it up and knows everything that's going on, and they are responsible for supporting it. And if they leave the organization, and who knows what's going to happen, if it breaks or if it's going to keep working. And so that's something you kind of want to make sure that you're preparing for. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer when it comes to kind of doing the DIY or getting the off the shelf solution. I think some of it can depend on what you need or what you want. And to some degree, like, there's also the hybrid option where you get kind of an off-the-shelf solution, and then you get a developer who can help you customize it. Kind of what Salesforce is based around. And it'll be interesting also to see, and I think we'll talk about this more as well, like what these kind of off-the-shelf solutions, like how they integrate kind of automation and AI and to help customize the solution as well.
Thank you so much. I think while we have you, do you want to talk a little bit more about, I think this kind of leads into talking about like the supply chain issues. So if you are using a corporate, platform, you're kind of dependent on them. And if you're using IT, you're dependent on the supply chain. So can you talk a little bit about what you see happening with supply chain issues in the future?
Yeah. So we we serve a lot of different clients, and we want our clients to use good, solid IT hardware, and so we try to encourage them to get to buy just from a few vendors that we're familiar with and that we know provide really good stuff. But recently one of the vendors we like to use for networking equipment, Cisco Meraki, like you can't get their firewalls or their access points right now because they're going through supply chain disruptions that are they've been hit with now and again since COVID 2019, since the pandemic. Speaking of COVID is still a factor. China only just loosened their COVID policies back in December. It is still around. And in addition to that, like we also, like, this just brings to mind that we don't really know what's coming next when it comes to like the great next disaster. It could be a new virus, environmental catastrophe, political shocks. We're just entering the the 2024 election cycle here in the U.S., and we've already got pundits who are predicting civil unrest. In addition to that, during COVID, a lot of organizations switched to going 100% remote, and then after the pandemic ended, they either stayed remote or they went hybrid. One thing to think about is how are you responding to that, in the sense of like, how are you updating your policies and your procedures? One non-IT thing to think about also is, how are you maintaining your organization's culture if you're hiring new staff who are out of the area, and who maybe you've been working with for months and have never met face to face? How do you keep that strong culture at your organization? Because a lot of our clients have really great cultures, which is one of the draws that brings people to work there.
That's great. I want to make sure that we've got a couple of more questions that came in. And I know, Nura, you're like ready to talk about AI anytime we ask you those questions. So I just wanted to go quickly to our learning objectives for today, which were to understand cutting edge and future IT trends for nonprofits. And maybe I should have reworded that to be aware of, because we've really scratched just the very tip of the surface. And so I think it's hard that we had several questions that come in. We're like, well, it's hard to understand how a lot of these issues are going to impact me personally, but also my organization going forward. So I would just say, reach out to your trusted IT, provider. There's a big community of people online as well. And, just stay as current as you can, which was our second learning objective, was to why it's important to keep up with tech trends. Even if you're not necessarily a techie person, your organization might not be the most techie organization, but all of these issues, these wide ranging issues, have such an impact on how we work and how our organizations work and what we're able to do to achieve our missions. And then I think we did really well on the last objective of having a wide discussions of nonprofits of the future. So now I want to turn it back over to Nura. I think if you wanted to talk a little bit more about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, quickly though, artificial intelligence has been trending for the past few years, and we've seen at the nonprofit sector AI-driven fundraising solutions that integrate with existing CRM, whether it's Salesforce or whichever CRM you use. And AI can actually do some machine learning of your existing CRM data and churn out some good insights to help you with your email campaigns. In the past 3 months, though, we have seen an evolution of AI in terms of having conversation with an AI, asking questions and getting responses. In one solution from OpenAI called ChatGPT has been quite impressive, even though we know that it's still in its primitive stage. It has shown some great potential. I've heard stories of students actually doing their homeworks using ChatGPT. Some people writing their resignation letters with ChatGPT, composing the entire letter. Some sending out marketing emails. ChatGPT has its limitation. It only has data up until 2001. Microsoft blew our minds just a few weeks ago with the integration of ChatGPT in the search solution Bing, and that actually has more real time or real life interaction. So you can simply, if you're searching for anything, just type a question and it presents an answer for you in a concise format, unlike the way we've traditionally used chat. So AI is showing growing potential in actually being a disruptor over the years, and even up until now, we are seeing that it may actually change the way we do our research using search engines. But I would be wary about the ethical use of AI, as it's going to be part of our lives and part of the way we work. Maybe some of you that have Office 365 already have seen some AI insights to the way you do your work and so on. So more to come on AI. I think we would have more sessions about the evolution of AI, but it's definitely here to stay.
All right, well, I thank you all. Thank you so much, Nora, for that. And I know you're going to give a couple more webinars going forward on AI specifically for nonprofits. So we'll keep everyone, those will be on our website. You can find more about that later. You can always contact us and get in touch with us about any of the topics that you heard today. There were a couple of questions that we didn't get to answer. One great one about creating situations where organizations can share solutions with other communities. So if you found a tool that really works, or maybe a suite of tools that is helping you do what you want to do and being better able to share that with other nonprofits. So I think that's a great question. We didn't quite have time to answer it today. I'm going to let everyone go, but we will include some of our thoughts on these questions in the transcript. So look back for that. And I just really appreciate your time today. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Pat. And thank you, Nora, for sharing these forward-looking ideas with us. And as you said, Nora, I think you've blown my mind. I think we might have blown some other people's minds, but hopefully we were able to give you some good information and some ideas on what you need to look at in terms of IT and nonprofits. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.